I think we just have this fear that if we live into who we really are, and we do the things that like really light us up, really bring us joy, we're going to either disrupt someone, we're going to make someone uncomfortable, we're going to upset them, we're going to disappoint them. And there might be some people you disappoint, but for me, it's like the people that really love you are going to start to see this version of you
Yeah.
that's fully alive. And that's what they want. And
Welcome, Andrea. I'm so excited that you're here on the Brave Bitches podcast. Thanks for having a little combo with me today.
yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I know we had a little connection chat a few weeks ago, and I felt like we totally vibed, hit it off, had a great combo. I felt like I had known you for a long time and we were meeting for the first time. So I'm super excited that we actually get to talk more because I really want to hear more of your story. I want to get to know you and yeah, just dive in. So I'm stoked that you were willing to be here. So something to just let us kind of jump in really quick. I thought of this question before we hopped on today, so I'm just going to throw this at you. Um, just to get to know you and establish a little thing to start with is like, what if you could pick something or someone, what makes you feel most beautiful?
Mm. My partner and I were having this conversation the other day saying what makes us feel the most erotic.
Ooh, love that.
So I'm gonna go with that. Music, like
Mm,
slow, gooey, juicy music. It's part of my morning ritual, my morning routine. Like I just get on my mat and I just let my body move.
mm.
And that for me is like the best way to start my day, is just
Yes.
being in my body and this slow movement.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. Music for me so much as well. Like specifically dancing with movement where
Mhm.
you're in your body and and I feel so free and there's like this mix of like pleasure and sexuality and like all that. I have to know, is there like a go-to song you have for that morning routine?
Yes, recently it's been Maggie Rogers. I don't know if you're a fan of her.
Hmm.
Um, but she has a song called Sticks or something, and it's just this like slow. Anyway, that has been mine like the last few weeks, and I love it.
Yes, that's so good. I am a fan of like the slow, sensual music as well, but also when I at nighttime I've been having fun before bed is like putting on a twerk playlist and just like shaking my ass. And like sometimes it's like that it's like 90s music to like napping something that where I'm just in my body and I'm having a good time shaking my ass and there's no expectations. There's I don't have to look a certain way, but just be in my body. Dance is amazing for that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like this is a great. I'm gonna just dive into this because so go back, what, 3 years ago, I so disconnected from my body
Mhm.
my entire life. And I started going to therapy by myself, and my therapist was like, I had just said, I feel like I have this rage inside of me that I've been carrying my entire life. And if I start to feel it, it's going to take over control and I'll
Mhm.
never come back. And so I'm afraid. And so she told me to rage dance, like turn on just
Ooh.
like drum beat music and dance. And the first time I ever did that, and this was only 3 years ago, I was at home by myself in my bedroom, door closed, and I felt so awkward
Mhm.
and I was just like afraid. I had wasn't dancing, I wasn't moving, and I just was afraid even by myself to move. And so going from there to fast forward to now, I go to raves. My kids, I have two teenagers, and I will just like turn on music and I'll be like, we need a dance. And it's part of my morning routine. And like you're so right, being embodied, like in your body and connected to your emotions and moving that. There's a class I go to on Wednesday mornings and it's intuitive movement and it's amazing. Like she'll guide you for maybe 2 minutes and then the music changes and by the end you're like crying, you're like
Mm.
shaking, you're dancing, you're laughing, and you just don't realize how much dance does like for your soul and for your body and how disconnected we can be. But I went on a little tangent there, but it's just, yeah, I just
No,
feel
I
like
love it.
that and being able to reflect back and just think going from so disconnected and being afraid to even express myself by myself to being able to just do it openly in front of people, in front of other humans, and just
Hmm.
not give a fuck.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's so rad because I think a lot of us do get in that place where we don't even realize we're not disconnected with our body or that we are disconnected with our body. We don't even realize like where to start with that. And so I absolutely love that your therapist was like, girl, why don't you try dancing? I think that's so cool because that's showing to me how much more therapy is not just focused on talking and as
Mm,
important as that is, but also the body, right? And moving it and like bringing it back into yourself and connecting
mm,
that. I think that's so cool that you had, I mean, it sounds like you had an amazing therapist to be able to first even have that idea and initiation for you. But you said when you first started that you felt awkward even in a room by yourself where no one could see you. And now you're just this badass who's like fully like, let's go anytime, anywhere. Tell me some of that journey. Like, give me some of how did you get through that awkwardness and that feeling of shame and just disconnection?
Uh, I mean, it feels like it's been a really long journey, but like I guess when I reflect, it was really condensed. Like 3 years is not that long. I'm about to turn 43, so to say like I was disconnected from my body until I was roughly 40 years old, and I think part of it, I went through a divorce, one, so shortly after I started going to therapy, and that kind of just catapulted me into this whole like what am I going to shed that does not belong to me anymore? Like, what beliefs, what patterns, what stigmas am I holding on to that were never really mine? And for the first time in my life, let myself feel everything like grief, the rage, like emotions I had always been so afraid to feel. And when you were saying this, it gave me goosebumps when you were saying, like, we can only talk so much, but it's getting in our body, like embodied. You can go to therapy and you can say all the things, but you're right, like everything is stored in our bodies, and until we really like feel it and let it move through us, it's just stuck energy. And so I feel like it was like a slow thing of doing it by myself, finding space, creating space, doing that. And then it just kind of morphed into like letting myself feel, I think feeling the grief, the pain, the heartache, the rage, the things that I was so afraid to feel, that just when you let yourself sink into that, the higher you're going to come out of it. And it's like it just opened me up to this, like it just opened me, it cracked me open. Like now I'm open to joy and pleasure and freedom and like this bliss that I had never experienced before. And I think combination between turning 40, getting divorced after 16 years of marriage, was just
Mm,
like I don't give a fuck anymore. Like I want to feel good in my body and in my skin, and I want to show up for life and not just be, I just think most people were walking around like
yeah.
here and not experiencing, the whole range of life. And
Hmm.
yeah, and I just dove into it.
That's so cool. Yeah, I I loved what you were saying. You were like, once I started to go down and experience the depths and the not so great feelings, then you were able to experience these beautiful highs and the pleasure and goodness of life, right? Because you are so right. I think so many of us, I mean, I know I lived like this for many
Mhm.
years too. We live in this like neutral state, right? And then if there are highs or lows, they're like really fast little spikes or really, deep lows that don't feel like we're actually experiencing them and
Yeah.
we stay in this kind of numb state, right? And so
Mhm.
I love what you were saying about that if we give permission and freedom for the yuck and the mud and all of that, that we give so much permission also for the sunshine and the flowers and the beauty and
Mhm.
like pleasure of life. And so it sounds like for you, what first triggered that entire kind of journey of your growth was going through divorce. And that's a huge transition I think a lot of people can connect with. Like, I would love for you to go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I got married young. I was 23. I guess it depends where you grew up. I grew up in Utah, where that was maybe considered old. There's a lot of women getting married
Mm-hmm.
19, 20. I was 23, got married, immediately had kids. Leading up to that, I had an eating disorder, my whole life. So I was like, what? being disconnected from your body, like that was me. I was disconnected. I was numbed out. I, abused my body, did all the things. And so got married super young and then just went into mom mode. It was like trying to make a marriage work, trying to do everything for my kids. And it just like had been this slow. I started getting into like personal growth, personal development, a few years, maybe 5 years before my divorce.
Mm.
And it just was like we started to grow like this, and finally just got to the point where it was like this isn't working. There had been infidelity, betrayal, like over the years, and so a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. But it just I had this belief, and I feel like as society we put so much on it that like if this marriage doesn't work, then I'm a failure.
Mm.
Then I'm letting my kids down. Then my kids are going to have a broken home. I didn't try hard enough. I didn't do enough. Like all those things, rather than realizing like letting go of something, that it's okay if something ends, that doesn't make it a failure. Like I don't look back at those 16 years as a failure. Like I learned so much. I grew so much as a person. I have two amazing kids. And all of that, had I not been through all of that, it would have never gotten me to where I was, to where I was just like, this life is not working for me anymore. Like, this does not feel good. And I resisted it probably for about a year. Like, I knew in my heart, I knew in my soul,
Mm.
I had made the decision, and then I started resisting it. So, going back to the whole emotions too, it's like, it's not change and hard things that are hard. It's the resistance to them. And
Oh,
yes, when we
totally.
feel those, it's heavy and you feel it, but when you can be in it and just say, like, this is just where I am. It's temporary and I'm going to get through it, but I'm not going to try to get through it and try to like get myself out of it, which I can be prone to too. Is like, I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to go to breath work. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do all these things so I don't have to feel like shit anymore. Where it's just like, if you just let yourself be in the experience, it's going to pass so much faster. And that's probably what divorce taught me. But it also, just realized like when going through divorce was again like that permission slip to say, like, what's working for my life now and what's not. I just recently did this meditation. She was talking about like so often our true desires, or we are built around expectations. We don't want to disappoint people, our parents,
Mm.
our spouse, our kids. And so we try to like fit our hopes and dreams around these trees, but it's like, what if you just like cut everything down and
Yeah.
you could say, I'm starting like fresh open field. What trees do I want to plant? And that can be really scary to do, especially when you are a mom and you have responsibilities, and saying like, well, what if I just pretended for a second I wasn't a mom? Like, what would I really want? And I had to do that. I was like, okay, I'm not married anymore. And when I got divorced, I turned 40 that same year. It felt like all those things I said. I felt like a failure. I felt like my life was ending. I felt like I'm the only 40-year-old woman that's divorced, and like my life is over. I don't know what to do. And it just felt like that. And then I just had to make that decision. Is like, okay, I can either be in this and decide like this is the end of my life.
Hmm.
Everything I had been working for the last 40 years is now over. This is it. Or I can say, like, I had a friend that said like, you're gonna live to be like 90, your life is not even halfway over. And that was like, oh my god, yeah, like I get to choose the next part of my life. Like, what if I started from scratch? What am I carrying around that does not belong to me and never belonged to me?
Mm.
And just it just feels like this freedom. And so yes, divorce was the hardest thing I have ever been through, the most heartbreak, devastating. Like, I felt this great, I still feel it, and it's been 3 years, but it also was like the most beautiful experience that I have ever been through. And I wish, hope, want to change that as society, that we can see it as like the end of a relationship. Marriage doesn't have to be this like awful thing. It can actually be this really beautiful, powerful thing.
Mm. Hmm. Oh my gosh, you said so many good, juicy things in that. I was just like soaking it up because, like, the one thing that really stuck out with me is you said something along the lines of it's not the experience and the pain that or
Mhm.
the thing that's happening that hurts us. It's our resistance to it. It's our it's the shame we attach to it, this like story of what it means, right? Because I totally get,
Mm,
I have that same mentality sometimes when I'm struggling. I'm like, this is going to last forever. Like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, no one's ever experienced this before. And
Hmm.
we have like these like horrible thoughts about like it being the end of the world type of thing. And I can only imagine with something as significant as divorce, where not only are you experiencing the grief and pain of the ending of a relationship, but like who you are. Like a wife has been an identity for you for so many years. Mother, our family unit, like all of these things have been this part of your life, and you just had it all stripped down at the exact same time. And
Hmm.
that's such a raw, so many things that you're handling at the same time. But when you allowed yourself to say, okay, like I am feeling this, this is true, and also this is not going to last forever. I think that's so powerful, and that is like what I feel like we're all trying to work towards, or have that permission, right? That ability to say, okay, I'm gonna allow myself to feel really shitty right now, and that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean I'm a failure. That doesn't mean that I'm stuck here forever. But just allowing that to exist, I think. I mean, I love that. I'm like, I got goosebumps when you said that part.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like too, we spend so much time resisting it because one, I think out of fear, like you said, have this fear that if we let ourselves feel it, we're going to get stuck in it. We're not
Mm,
going to come out of it. It's going to take over. And so then we start to resist it. But the truth is, the whole like what makes life so beautiful is the highs and lows. It's like a roller coaster. You don't get to experience like the thrill and the excitement when you don't hit the bottom. And the more we can just accept that and just like, yes, this is all a part of life. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. It's just this is part of the human experience. Is we're going to go
mm-hmm.
through hurt, we're going to go through pain, we're going to go through heartbreak, we're going to go through betrayal. It's just it's part of it.
Yeah. I heard this story. I can't remember the full story, but it was like if you were an alien and you came to Earth, and they were like, okay, you have the choice that you can experience just, one thing, or you could experience every single aspect of what it's like to live on Earth, to
Mm.
be a human. What are you going to choose? You're probably going to choose everything,
Ooh,
right?
goosebumps.
Right? You're
Yes.
like, please give me the full experience. I want it all. And like what comes with that is some, dark moments and some things that feel really horrible. But like
Mm.
that is the vastness of the experience. And if we can allow ourselves permission, like as if we were an alien saying, yes, please give me it all. I want to experience it all.
Yes, I love that analogy. Yes, the whole experience. Like, yes, I'm in for that.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like for you, you're on the outside of this journey, right? Like maybe not the total outside. I'm sure you're still processing and, growing, but you're able to look back and say, okay, like the key was I let go of things. The key was I danced. But like when you were in the like muck of it and you were stuck in that moment, what were some of the tools or things you did to first start taking those steps to get to where you are now?
Hmm. I mean, number one is I made a very intentional decision that I was not going to numb myself. I was
Mm,
not going to drink alcohol through it. A few years prior, I had found out that my ex, like husband at the time, had had an affair. That was the first time I found out, and I used alcohol. I used prescription
mm-hmm.
drugs, like I just to get by, to continue to show up. And I just, one, made the decision and gave myself permission to say, like, I am just going to fully feel this experience. I'm not going to try
Yeah.
to run from it. I'm not going to numb it. I'm not going to like over exercise. That's been a coping mechanism for me. I'm just going to sit with it. And so I started really creating space. Like I would take hot baths and I would
Mm.
just sit in the tub and I would just cry. I would the rage dancing. I would sometimes go in my backyard. I would like break plates and scream, or I would
I
just like
love that.
get, and it just like felt so, but it's like a toddler, like you express you get it out, and then it's like, okay,
And
now
then
I'm
you're
good.
over
And
it.
so,
Yeah.
yes, and then you move on. And so I would do that. I spent a lot of time by myself, which was really scary because I grew up in a family of six. I was the second kid. I got married really young. I had never in my entire life, up until going through my separation, spent one night by myself that I can think
Mm.
of ever. And I also made that decision, was like, I am just going to spend a lot of time by myself, as scary as that seems. And as much as I'm probably not going to like a lot of the shit that's about to come up, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to really get to know myself. So I kind of just decided to like date myself, but intent, like really get to know myself, not just like fancy dinners and bubble baths, but it was like bubble baths where I'm going to cry and I'm going to scream
Hmm.
and, and I'm going to like meditate. So meditation, sitting with myself, this is one thing I still to this day do. My mat is like a permanent thing on the floor in my living room, and every morning I usually just breathe for a few minutes because I feel like it usually takes a few minutes of stillness before emotions finally start to come up. So
Yeah.
sitting with myself, and then dance, movement, letting those emotions move through my body. Breath work, I started going to breath work. Play. I gave myself permission to have fun again, which I feel like I didn't do for 16 years because I was just in like mom mode and was like, I need to make sure everything's getting done. But started going to music festivals with my
Hmm.
sisters, like started going, spending more time in nature and hiking and like doing all these things that I always wanted to do. But again, I had like told myself the story, well, you're a mom, you're a wife, so just build what feels good around these trees that are here, rather than just saying like, no, what if I just knock down all these trees? and and it's not, I think we just have this fear that if we live into who we really are
Hmm.
and we do the things that like really light us up, really bring us joy, we're going to either disrupt someone, we're going to make someone uncomfortable, we're going to upset them, we're going to disappoint them. And there might be some people you disappoint, but for me, it's like the people that really love you are going to start to see this version of you
Yeah.
that's fully alive. And that's what they want. And I even asked my kids the other day, I said, like, what is the one thing you've noticed has changed the most about me since your dad and I got divorced, a few years ago? And they both said something similar. Like my son said, he said, well, before when you were married, it was like you were just a stay-at-home mom, which I've never been a stay-at-home mom, but in his mind, it was just like
Mm.
that was my job. And he said, now you do things and you have more fun. You go out with your friends, you spend time with your sisters. And my daughter said, you go after things, like you see things that
Mm.
you want and it feels scary. And sometimes you'll say, I'm not sure, but it's like you take this big leap and you go after it. And so hearing that validation, like my kids are great. They're thriving. They have two parents, two homes where they're loved.
Hmm.
Um, and they get to see both of their parents as individuals and individual
Yeah.
humans, and in our humanness, and just me as a woman, not as just their mom. And I think that's the
Yes.
greatest gift that we can give other people, is like, this is me as a human, as a woman in this world, in this body.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. I mean, even for me, my parents, I'm one of five kids, so I'm a big family too. I
Mm,
know the chaos and the not really any alone time type of um, upbringing, which I love and I still am so thankful for. But something that I was so thankful for is like when my dad retired and they started going out and doing things that they love to do. I love it. Oh my gosh. Like as a kid, like I mean, I was only in my early 20s when I started to see my parents like go to concerts and go on road trips and go to
mm,
China and South America and like Europe for 2 months and just like doing all these things that like I always knew they loved to travel, but they never did because they homeschooled, they had five kids, they were like in that. And so I feel like just as another perspective from a kid watching their parents or their parents step into themselves and actually enjoy life and prioritize things they love, like that's such a gift. For me, it made me so happy to see them actually doing things they love instead of playing that
mhm,
same role forever, you know?
mhm,
Um, and so yeah, I think it also showed me and gave me so much permission as well in my early 20s to be like, oh, you can do what you want, like, you know. And I was already kind of in that stage where I was figuring out who I wanted to be, right? Like 20s, it's messy time. But like I think that was a gift to me to see my parents also choosing that. But like they waited until they were in their 60s to start doing that. And so I'm like, okay, I don't want to
mhm.
wait that long. Like I want to start enjoying my life now.
Now,
So that's one
yeah.
thing. But yeah, I think it's powerful when people that love you start to see you choose yourself and take care of yourself. It's a gift to everybody around you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just had goosebumps again hearing you say that, but it's that too is like giving other people permission to do it,
Hmm.
especially when you're a mom. And I will tell my kids this, and this is one thing I've really tried to instill over the last few years is like, choose you. It's okay if you disappoint other people, especially me, especially your dad. Like, it is
Hmm.
okay if you disappoint us, and I
Exactly.
want you to like disappoint. And this, if we can teach our kids that, like, yes, you're gonna disappoint people when you start to show up as your truest self,
Hmm.
and that's okay. And the best way to teach them is by showing them, because you can't tell them to do something when they are watching you self-abandon, make yourself
Yeah.
small, you sacrifice yourself over and over again to make sure everyone around you is happy and content and not being
Hmm.
disrupted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so amazing how like the intention behind that, the intention of saying, okay, I'm going to sacrifice myself for others, right? I'm going to just make sure everybody else is happy. All of that comes from this place of like care, right? I love
Mhm.
them. I want them to be happy. I want them to be okay. I want them to be cared for. And yet it does this opposite effect. It ends up hurting yourself because you're not cared for. As long as, I mean, if you're abandoning yourself to do that, then you end up hurting yourself, but you're also in turn showing your kids, you're showing the people in your life like what is acceptable behavior in treating you, right? Like it's okay for me to be pushed to the side all the time because I do it myself. So yes, push me to the side. Or like it's okay that I don't do anything I love to do because I choose to do
Mhm.
that. So yes, make sure that I never, it's like this
Yeah.
interesting thing, but when we start to choose ourselves, like I mean, I think that's a such an important choice you can make. And like as someone who wants to be a mom one day, I'm not a mom yet. That's one of my fears, I think, is like how to figure out that balance of loving your kids and also choosing yourself. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious if you have any tips for me. Give me any
Yeah.
counsel you have
All the
for
tips.
that.
It's interesting because one of my sisters who I'm really close to, she just recently had a baby, and being able to watch, like, now that mine are teenagers and going back, it brings back so much. I feel like there's a phase when your kid's really little where you're just in it, like you're
Yeah.
consumed by it. But I will say, whatever, having a solid foundation of practices, rituals, things, a time for you that is like a no matter what is the best thing to do, because then when your life shifts, so whether it's having kids or anything else, like, life is going to change. But when that
Hmm.
happens, something unexpected, but you have that like solid foundation of, this is the bare minimum of what I need to feel connected to myself, of what I need in order to show up for myself and for others in the world. Like, this is the bare minimum of what I need. And you have that, and you have those practices, and you have those tools, and it's like, this is no matter what. Then when you become a mom, then when things happen and when shit comes up in life, which it's going to, you have that, and you can always go back to that, and you can
Mm.
carry it with you into the next part. So I feel like that is like the most important thing. And I wasn't there. I had kids really young. I wasn't like, I
Hmm.
wasn't aware. I wasn't doing the kind of work I am now. It's like I just dove into having kids and was like, this is
Hmm.
it. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and this is my life.
Yeah.
And like, that's one thing that I wish like every woman did before becoming a mom, is like have that practice and connection to yourself.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like to me the key is first to know yourself, to know what your needs are, what's your bare minimum, like you said, to
Mm,
provide for yourself, and then have those practices or those things that you do that to fill that tank. And if you have that already as a habit or a easy thing you can jump into, then when you do get placed in the situation of being a parent, which is just all consuming. You're in it, like you said. You can at least know, okay, these are some
mm,
tools I have to take care of myself. Here's some things that I need to make sure that I'm doing every week, so that I'm provided for throughout it all.
mhm.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Okay, huge. I love that. That's something that like because I do feel like when I see a lot of parents around me, a lot of, especially moms, right? There's so much of that self-sacrificing and that lack of identity outside of just being a mother. And so like I even experienced that with my mom when I was growing up. I really felt like she was full mom. That was just what she was just full mom. And I'm so thankful for that in a lot of ways. I do feel like I had a great childhood because of some of that. But also like I love this like new wave of parenting that I feel like I'm seeing where it's like permission for moms to be more than just one thing, right? To be multifaceted and to say, yes, I'm a
Yeah.
mom and I'm
Yeah.
this and I'm that and I'm this. And I think that's so great. I feel like it's popping up in my head. Like people joke about like 80s parents or like, like parenting in the 80s was like you didn't know your kid where your kids were. And then
Yes.
I feel like then there was like I've seen like those ads that ran in like the 80s and 90s that were like, "Do you know where your kids are right now?" And so I feel like that parenting was like very maybe more hands off, and then we went like full extreme where it was like very like you're involved in everything. And hopefully maybe we're kind of hitting a point now where there's like more of a balance in how we're valuing
Mhm.
parenting, but I don't
Yeah.
know. That's from an
Yeah.
outside perspective.
No, I agree, and I see it, and I love that as like as a parent is the balance of like our job is not to tell them who to be. It's
Mhm.
just to love them while they figure it out.
Mm, yes. Oh, honestly, is that not just true for any relationships we hold?
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Romantic kids, all of
Yeah.
them, yes. Like it's not our job to
Yeah.
tell them like who to be, what to do, like let them figure it out.
Yeah. And just love them through it. And like, I
Mhm.
see you where you're at. Love ya. Um, but I can only imagine, like, even in a marriage, I've been married for 7 years. And so I feel like there's already that juggling of like not trying to just
Mhm. Mhm.
change him, right? Or like
Mhm.
if I don't like when
Mhm.
he does something to be like, be the man exactly that I want to mold you into. And so that's something that I already feel like can slide into that, especially when I'm not in a healthy place in my life. But as a parent, that's got to be even more so, right? Like you birthed this human. This is someone you've seen
Yeah.
since they like threw up on you when they were, an infant. And now you see them like coming into that. What is that like for you as a mom to like, how do you handle that? Like stepping off and letting them be who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole expectations around any relationship again, like as when you become a parent and it's like you have these expectations, this idea in your mind of what your kid is going to be like from the second they're born, and it's just something we do as humans. In relationship,
Mm-hmm.
we do that. It's like there's these unspoken expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish I had like a magic solution. I have
Yeah.
two teenagers. I have two teenagers right now, and they are very different, like wildly different. Uh, one is a little bit harder right now. And it's, wanting to like reminding myself like let him figure it out because there's this part of
Mm-hmm.
me that like wants to hop in all the time, and you as a parent you don't want to see your kid hurt, you don't want them to see them suffer, but it's also remembering like that's also part of life, going back to like
Yeah.
highs and lows. It's like they have to experience it, you can't protect them, and if it's important to them, they're going to figure it out. And this is easier said than done. I'm in like the midst of trying to figure out how to do this without, trying to control or to like guide into what I think is best, and just say
Mm-hmm.
like you come up with a plan, and watching them become humans. But I mean, parenting is one of the most beautiful things for that reason. You get to watch this like them more from an infant to a child, and all of a sudden you're riding in your car and you look over and it's like they're grown, they're this
Mm-hmm.
human, and it's like, oh my god, when did that happen? um and it's going to continue, they're going to continue to change and grow, and nothing is permanent. I think that's one thing to remember too. It's like for ourselves, for like our kids, nothing's permanent. i don't
Mm-hmm.
I think we put too much pressure on making a right decision because of that. We think like, well, once we've made the decision, we have to stick to it. When it's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, maybe that wrong decision leads you to the right decision. or a better decision, or it's just part of the process. So I feel like that too is letting go of like there's no right or wrong. Like
Yeah.
it's all just a learning process.
It's all a journey, right? And yeah, just like you were saying earlier when we were talking about emotions, right? Like allowing them to exist because we know that it'll pass, it'll change, things will shift, right? And it's that same thing with your kids as well. Like they're going through something now, but to see them where they're at, you know that things are shifting, they're changing, they're always growing, especially as a teen and a kid. You really are changing literally every single day. And so, yeah, that's such a good reminder. I feel like a lot of it comes back to what you were saying of just like checking in with yourself and like, okay, let's redo this, let's recheck, and just making sure that you are, aware of your own inner self, so then you can then be there for your kids' inner self too. That's powerful. I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like that also transitions into if you don't mind me diving into this, but I'm curious, as someone who was married for so many years from a young age, who has now been single, have you dove into dating at all, or what has that been like for you to kind of explore that, if you have, in these past few years?
Yeah, I actually have. So like I said, I took about a year where I really just was like very intentional about dating myself. I have been seeing someone for a year now, long
Okay.
distance. He lives in Texas. I live in Nevada. And at this, you can do so much healing work on your own. And this is something that I am very much learning right now. And you're like, yes, I figured it all out. This is great. And then you're in relationship with someone
You're faced
intimately, and
with all
all
of
of
it
a sudden,
again.
yes, it's like, ah, like
Yeah.
here it all is, and you're triggered. And so it has been an amazing process, and finding someone who I think goes back to the like unspoken expectations of like being really real and open and vulnerable, and realizing like what's most important is someone whose values align with mine, and being
Mm.
in this relationship as a woman. So I grew up in a religion that was very women, you don't have a voice. You're taught at a very young age to ignore your intuition, that
Hmm.
you don't know, don't trust your body, it's wrong, listen to this male man up here, like this is who knows what's best for you. And then so lived my life like that, and then was in a marriage where there was like a lot of betrayal and hurt. And so my relationship to men was not great. That inner rage that I was talking about, that there was
Hmm.
like just so much rage around that, and the patriarchy. And but being in this relationship has been incredibly healing, to realize like, one, there are men out there who are doing the deep work to
Hmm.
heal, and it's not just women that are hurt by the way the world has been run, by
Mm,
patriarchy and
yeah.
everything. It's hurting men too. And so I think there are men out there who are really doing that work, and to be in a relationship with someone who not only like wants to see the fullest expression of me, even when it's like uncomfortable for him when I'm in those emotions, but encourages it and like tries to dig deeper into who I am, that has been very healing for me. So, yeah, I would just say that is like it,
Yeah.
for all the women out there that are like, Aha, this is so awful. There are men out there who are doing the work, who
I
I think
agree.
also are on the same path to heal the world.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of amazing men in this world, who are committed to grow in themselves and become better. And yeah, and it's so interesting what you said about how you can do so much healing on your own, right? And I so feel that, like, having the, you're like, oh, I got this. I've solved my childhood trauma all
Figured it all
through.
out.
Yeah, I figured out everything, all my inner workings, and you're like, I'm doing great. And then suddenly you're in a relationship and you're like, oh, holy shit, it's still all there. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So just the
Yep.
right situation needs to come up for it to trigger, and then like all my childhood stuff or relationship past like just comes like roaring
Mm-hmm.
out again, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it's an interesting thing, because I think there's a lot of people that say like, I mean, at least I know when I was kind of running in like the yoga community and like the spiritual community, there was a lot of like, well, I'm going to heal myself before I get in a relationship. I'm going to fully heal myself before I, dive into romance, yada, yada. And it's like, that's just a bunch of BS, honestly. I think you could do
Mm-hmm.
a lot of healing on your own, so much healing. And there is power in healing on your own. And also, I think so much like the next level of healing comes in relationship with others, whether that's romance or friendship or family, right?
Yeah,
But it's our
100%.
connections and interactions with others that really truly let us face our inner self and like really heal, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, that's the whole point for me of this life is relation. Like, how do we
Mm-hmm.
relate to others? How do we connect? It's connection. And whether it's intimate romance or not, but you're right, like deep friendships, sisterhood, any of that, it's going to be a mirror back at us of
Mm-hmm.
we just spent the most time we've ever spent together. Normally it's like a few days, but we spent 10 days. And that was a real, it was like, okay, here is a lot of shit coming up. And
Yeah.
after we were kind of decompressing it, and I said, I this was an experience for me to see where I'm not free.
Mm,
And take this as a lesson because a big part of me wanted to beat myself up, shame myself, judge myself because I went
mm-hmm.
back to like old patterns and I had to let go of that and just say like, okay, this is again, this is life, this is learning. Yes, being in a relationship is going to do that, and
Yeah.
you can't beat yourself up. You just get to, it's just what you choose to do with it and how you choose
Mm-hmm.
to repair from it.
Totally. And it's also so helpful when you have someone else who's has that same perspective, like you were saying, who's willing to go through the uncomfortableness of conflict or triggers or emotions or any of these things in a relationship. Like, yeah, for me it's been in my marriage is being aware of what is like how I act when I know I need to be taking care of myself. Like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, I notice that I get highly critical of my husband when I have to heal and do some things for myself. And like just knowing these like little tiny things, like, oh, okay, I've been really nitpicking at him today. Okay, I probably am actually frustrated with something happening inside me. There's some emotion I need to face. There's some sort of like maybe I just need some alone time. Like I need something, right? There's something that's coming from me. But if I'm starting to be like, he's the problem
Yeah.
for everything, then
Yes,
I'm actually the
it's you. Yeah.
problem.
I think my therapist said that to me once too. She was like, anything, whatever, if someone is bringing up strong emotions in you, it has nothing to do with them and everything
Hmm.
to do with you. And that's like a real hard truth to sit with, but it is a
It
truth.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I'm also thankful that my husband will like say that to me. Like he'll, if I'm like starting to get, in my funk, he'll be like, what do you need? He'll be like, let's stop here for a second. What do you need right now, babe? What's going
So
on?
good.
And I'm like, oh, I'm like,
Yes.
man, I thought I had worked through this. I thought that I was like aware of myself enough to be able to stop and take care of myself when I need to or do. But it's like, I think that's another beauty of partnership or friendship or any of that is like also having someone just show that loving mirror to you. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
maybe
But
you're not
loving
seeing
mirror, like you
something.
said, yeah, because
Yeah.
if because they're doing the work too, so they can step outside of it and not
Mm-hmm.
try to fix it, not try to like abandon themselves, not get defensive, or they can just say, okay, this has nothing to do with me,
Mm-hmm.
everything to do with you, but I'm not gonna shame you for that. Just like, hey, I love you. What do we need? What do you need right now?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And also that comes to like when I sometimes I can't see what's going on in myself too. Or I'm like, okay, what it's like I know something's coming from me and I don't really know where to start with that. And so that's when I always call my brother because my brother knows
Mm-hmm.
me really well, but he also knows my husband really well. And so if I'm having relationship issues, I call my brother. I'm like, hey, and I tell him I'm like, this is what's going on, and he'll be like, all right, you're not gonna like this. And then he'll tell me some love and mirror. But I love it because I feel like that's why I call him. I don't call him so he
Hmm.
can be like my sister who's like, well, screw that guy. Like, you know,
Yes,
that's
yes.
like the
Which we
sister.
need that person
Yes,
too.
we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. We do. We need that sister energy sometimes to be like, I got you, girl. Screw him. Like, you're in the
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good
Oh, we
though.
need it both. Hmm.
Yeah, that's what I think that's the cool thing about being in a big family. Like, I do have you too as well, right? Like, there's always someone to call for something, you know?
Hmm.
Like,
The
if
one you
I,
call just to vent where it's like, I just need a vent. And then you can just,
yes, no
yeah.
judgment, no fixing anything. And then, like, yeah, I think that's something that's really cool about having a lot of siblings. And like, I'm thankful
Yeah.
because I'm pretty close with most of or all of them. And so I know who to call when I have
Yeah.
the right situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I love that.
Yeah, you learn a lot. Like, at least for me, I feel like I learned a lot about relationships and relating to others through my sibling relationships. And so that still feeds into now, like the way I connect with my friends and my partner and all that stuff is those first relationships that I held with my siblings. Honestly, probably even more than my parents in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I connect to that too. I'm really close to my siblings. We're really close in age, and even now, back to the like the triggering, not wanting to control, I have sisters where sometimes it's like I'll want to like jump in and
Mm,
fix their problem, or it's like,
girl. Yes.
yeah, being able to like just be like, okay, this is your journey, not mine.
Hmm.
Um, we're on two different, very different paths. I'm just gonna love you through yours, where you just, but you like want to jump in and fix and tell them what to do, and like, so yeah, it's a great mirror too.
100%. I definitely feel that. That's like um, a huge thing that I am still always working on is like not taking the backpack of someone else and like being like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
my responsibility to fix everything that I can or take on the weight of what you're dealing with. Because yeah, like you were saying, and what we've been saying this whole time is like, we can't, like, for one thing, that doesn't support them and it doesn't support us, but also like things pass and that kind of mentality just ends up weighing down, I think, the entire relationship. So yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, this has been such a great conversation with you. I feel like we've dove into so many different things. I feel like I've learned a lot from you too as well. So I appreciate you just being open and honest and sharing with me so much of your story. This has been really an honor. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for having me. I've loved it too. Like you said, our first conversation, I felt like I've known you forever. I still feel like that, so I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, so cool. It's awesome. Yeah, okay, cool. Well then, I'm gonna probably wrap up our episode. Do you mind if I jump into our rapid fire questions?
Do it.
Okay, cool. So first question. I love this question because I feel like you get to know the mind of someone. If you could pick a superpower to have, what superpower would you pick?
I would fly.
Okay, love it. Okay, and why?
Easy.
Why
It
fly?
just, to me, it just feels like freedom, like just so open and free. Um, yeah, that's something I always think about. It's like, I just want like wings, want to fly.
Yes, wings too. It's so cool. That was gonna be my next question. Wings or like Superman style?
No, wings. I want full wings that just like sprout out. They're
Yes.
beautiful, they're big, I can fly.
That's so cool. I love it. Like full bird, like just gliding through the air. Yes, that's awesome. Okay, cool. Next question is what is a go-to comfort meal for you?
Go-to comfort meal. Soup, like any sort of soup with a lot of vegetables. Um, Sweet potatoes. I love a sweet
Sweet
potato.
potatoes. Like sweet potato
Hmm.
fries or like a good baked sweet
No, just
potato?
like a good baked sweet potato. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love sweet potato. I love roasted sweet potatoes. Oh, just like
Hmm.
add a little seasoning on there. Can't beat that. So
So
good.
good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, next question is if you could recommend, and this one might be a little tough one, so take the time if you need the time. 3 books, movies, or podcasts, what 3 would you recommend?
Okay, 3 books I would recommend for women. So there's one called Pussy, a Reclamation.
Ah,
That was like
yes. Okay, you are the
life
second
changing for
woman
me.
to recommend that book. I've read it too. It's a great book,
Oh,
but I
okay.
love that you're
I
the
just
second
read
woman
it
to
for the
recommend it.
second time. Yeah. For sure that one. I'm gonna recommend Conscious Uncoupling just because divorce is my thing. That for me like carried me through my divorce. There were so many beautiful passages in it that just like hit me and reminded me of like, okay, this is not the end. This is the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. So that, and then I would say for partnership, me and my partner just read one called Playing with Fire,
Okay.
about intimacy. I loved that.
Yeah, I've heard of that book. I haven't read it yet, but it's been recommended to me as well. Playing with Fire. Okay.
Hmm.
Cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I
And then
will.
podcasts, I would say Feminine Frequency. That kind of
Okay.
started my whole journey towards reconnecting to my body. Love that one. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I love it. Awesome. I will link or put all of this in the description too. So anyone that's curious to check out all of those, you can find that there. But final question is, why do you feel it's important to be brave?
I feel it just goes back to what we were talking about is like you have to lead. It gives others permission to do the same thing. So being brave, being big, being bold in your life, like really stepping
Mhm.
into who you are gives other people permission. And at the end of this life, I think that's probably my biggest fear is I don't want to look back and say like I didn't show up as my truest self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Amazing. So good. Thanks for that answer. Okay, well, before I let you go, where can people find you, connect with you? Is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, mostly on Instagram and it's reclaim_rise. I do this, I'm passionate about supporting women as they navigate divorce. So I'm coaching women going through that process, thinking about that process. All the information's on my Instagram, but that's mostly where I hang out.
Awesome. Perfect. Again, that will be linked in the description too. So if you want to connect with her, you can. But thank you again so much. This was so amazing,
Thank
Andrea.
you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Thank
much
you so
love.
much. I loved it. Yeah, you too.
Thank you so much for listening and watching this episode of the Brave Bitches podcast. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, share, review, all that good stuff. Also follow me on Instagram at Hannah Soul Marie or at Brave Bitches without the I for some behind the scenes look and clips from the episode. Again, thank you for listening and I'll see you next time.